All right. Today's guest is the founder and boss lady at Thrive in Recovery, through which she coaches and supports those in sobriety in healing their past traumas so that they can experience more freedom, pleasure, and purpose to create healthy relationships and thrive. Along her own journey to heal her trauma, she quite literally stumbled into a conscious, sober lifestyle, which has become a foundation of her work and deeper purpose in supporting others. She came to realize along the way that there's no one single approach to healing, and therefore got to work educating herself and training in some of the most effective healing modalities known today. Her coaching practice includes somatic experiencing, attachment theory, and other trauma-informed modalities related to living a conscious, sober lifestyle. Through her work with clients in creating healthier relationships, she found that when she was able to identify and unravel the root cause of their addiction, including grief, trauma, and attachment adaptations, not only were they more successful in nurturing healthy, sober relationships, but they were able to access their true potential and purpose. Outside of running her coaching business, you can find her practicing what she teaches, including cooking healthy, delicious food, playing outdoors, flowing in her yoga practice, and strengthening her connection to herself so that she can best serve others. Please help me give a warm welcome to Amy Guerrero.
Dang, you can roll your
Hello.
R's. Hello.
Hey,
So
I
good.
gave it a try specifically for you.
I love it. It's so good to be here. Thank you so much. That
Of course.
introduction, I think I might have written it, but it sounds so fucking good.
I
I'm
rewrote it
like,
for
yeah,
you.
that's exactly what I do.
Good thing I know you a little bit. And by the way, your last name, Guerrero, is, and I might have more of an Italian, pronunciation of it, but you forgot to mention that in Spanish, it means warrior.
Fuck yeah, it does.
So we're fucking with a
Yeah.
warrior here today, you guys.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yes.
And not
Yes.
your average warrior.
I always told my dad I would never change my last name if I got married because I want to keep the warrior.
I love it.
Yes.
No, mine means mountain lion in Italian. So, kind of the same thing, but it's also a mouthful. Monteleone. Uh, you should never change it. Let's just say it fits you well. And I mean, any last name that means warrior, I mean, you're fucking with the boss.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
A
so
very compassionate boss.
exactly. A very compassionate boss, of course. I mean, we're working in, the healing space. When it comes to trauma, the warrior archetype, let's say, has its place, but must be, in some ways, buffered by, the loving, healing, nurturing aspects that you so, I would say, prominently bring to your practice. But I'm biased, so what do I know?
No,
We'll get into it though, won't
it's
we?
yeah, it's absolutely true. It's just absolutely true. To be that force and to be that soft, seer of things and to bring in the artist and the softness of the nurturing and the compassion, especially into a space which has been predominantly patriarchal in nature. The 12-step program was made up by the Orthodox Church. At the end of the day, that's where Bill got it from. And it
Uh,
was a bunch of white men in a room, figuring out how to get sober. And thank God they did it. And and it worked for however long it works. And it worked to a certain extent. But even Bill did the steps and then was ready for something else. And he started experiencing with psychedelics and more trauma informed somatic experiencing. And I think cheated on his wife a few times, like he needed to go out there and explore. He's like, okay, now I'm sober and I got this down, that there's more to it. And the more to it is where I really focus. I always say to my clients, like, let's leave the alcohol or the maladaptive behaviors behind the curtain and let's get to why you were choosing these maladaptive behaviors. Because to me, sober can mean from many things. Like a lot of people are sober from their negative thinking. Some people are sober from
For
sugar.
sure.
Some people are sober from alcohol. Some people are sober from, cocaine, but they still drink alcohol. So there's
Mm,
lots of different ways to choose sobriety. And I meet people exactly where they're at, and really just explore the real shit that's underneath of there that can support them to really exactly what everything that you do is all about, to find that purpose
yeah.
state within them and then go out there in the world and really live it and use their experiences through coping to
Mm,
show people a path with more compassion. Because damn, I mean, if anyone's journey out there is anything like mine, I went into the depths because I couldn't find someone to meet me where I was at, and it took me deeper and deeper into depths of despair. So definitely have
I hear
earned
you.
my fucking seat here.
Oh my gosh. And what a beautiful preface to what, I hope to dive into today. And, your story and ultimately what has led you to the expression of your purpose in serving others. But before we get into that, I wanted to, give the audience a little bit of, context about, our history together. We met in 2019, right? I think it was at the
Yeah,
at back in the day, many moons ago when they used to do live events. We met in downtown LA at a Maston Kip event, right? That I think it
we
was
did.
maybe the Claim Your Power event live.
I don't
No,
remember. Rebel Practitioners?
Rebel Practitioner live. Yes, thank you very
Yeah.
much. And you know, and I really just wanted to commemorate, the fact that that was when I was first diving into the work, and meeting you at that event was just such a turning point for me, in terms of really finding an ally. Someone that I knew from the moment I met you. Your smile going from ear to ear in your very cute overalls that day. Just being so welcoming, to this community, that I was starting to dip my toes into. And I got to say that, I got to attribute and give you so much credit for continuing to invite me into this healing space of trauma informed work. And, I just feel so blessed to have met you, just 2 years ago, basically at this point. And how far it's come, right? How far it's come, and your journey, and obviously mine being a little bit newer, but all your guidance along the way has been just invaluable. So wanted to give you a lot of love for that before we got going.
Thank you so much. I really feel that. And I'm just so happy that we were both like standing there at the back of the room after there and just started that conversation. And you've been such a beautiful masculine presence in my life as well. And choosing to do
Thank you.
this, and most of the time that I've known you, I was choosing celibacy.
Mm.
And so it was just really nice to have a very safe, secure presence and connection with you and your masculine energy, and to feel so safe with that. So I really appreciate everything that we've both been for one another. And fucking hey, we've only just
Yeah,
begun. We've got a lifetime ahead of us, right? So it's so
I've
cool.
only just begun. You've given me such a wonderful background on yourself, but I'd love for you to share with the listeners, sort of what led you to get to this point, in your journey, or really to the point of where you found your purpose, so to speak. Um, yeah, why don't you take it away?
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to tell this story.
Of
Yeah,
course.
so I'll make the childhood portion short and I'll get right to it. So, I mean, I was my original incident, and the thing that happened to me right off the bat was that my mom didn't want me. Um it was just, poor thing. She had a lot of trauma. She was abused by her father sexually and her brother sexually. I don't know a lot of the story because she did end up taking me to term, and then after I was born, she just didn't feel mentally stable enough to take care of me. And so right off the bat, I had that abandonment. So I didn't have that secure attachment. Um, my grandmother and my dad stepped in
Mm.
and really supported me to, stay alive. They kept me alive.
Yeah.
And they did a great job. My dad is a phenomenal man, and he
Sounds
saved
like
my
it.
life more than once in my life. Right.
Mm.
My, the, it started showing up as trauma right away. I was constipated even just when I was
Mm.
still in diapers.
Oh,
And
wow.
so constantly in and out of the hospital trying to figure out like why I was constipated and what was going on. And now I know so clearly, and I actually started to figure this out in the mid 90s, that a lot of the reason that my body was constipated was because of unhealed trauma that was in my body, and it was getting stuck. And of course, that part of the nervous system needs to rest and relax, and I didn't ever feel safe to rest and relax. And it showed up in my childhood over and over and over again, where my mom would come in and out of my life and try to like kidnap me, do all these weird things. Um, and I just never felt safe in my own body. And I wasn't really taught regulation
Oh,
skills in the 70s and 80s. It was more like, quit crying, I'll give you something to cry about, or buck up, or
of
put a
course.
little whiskey on your teeth and knock you out. Just like all the
Absolutely.
different things that they did during that time period, which again, it's okay, right? But
Right.
it didn't
But
lend for a regulated nervous system
n-
as a child.
yeah, it doesn't
So,
sound like it's going to be an alternative to the mother's touch, and ultimately that connection that we're finding is so imperative to a child learning how to emotionally regulate.
oh yeah, 100%. I wasn't breastfeed, I was C-section. There was just a lot of things that were missing there. And my grandmother, who I called mom for most of my life, she died when I was really young as well.
Hmm.
Well, like right at that middle school age. Like right around the time where all my friends started exploring with sex. It's also interesting, like when you put it all together and you have, been doing this work for years, and you can look back and be like, oh
Period.
my gosh, all of that makes so much sense. How I started acting out at that time right after she died, all the things. So, um,
And about how
a
old were
lot
you?
happened when my grandmother passed.
Yeah.
I was 11 or 12.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I started my period early, and I was like, already experiencing a lot of different things in my body. And again, still with very little regulation skills. I remember I hid in my closet for as long as I could. Like
Mm.
whenever I wasn't at school, I was just hanging out in my closet with my grandmother's chanclas. She had these little pink rose petal chanclas that she left, and oh gosh, yeah, like rough times. And
Yes.
I don't, I'm my family is so beautiful and I love them so much, but I am definitely the one that feels the most, and
Sure.
had a real like desire to be like really held in all of my feelings. But no one was equipped to do that. And so my aunt would do it the best that she could, but no one in my immediate family really felt as much as I did. So I was kind of considered this odd person. And it was what it really led me to do as at a young age was to go find my friends' parents that I could
Sure.
feel more of that with. And so it's so funny. I
Yeah.
tell the story often of when I was little, I would go to my friend's house and I'd end up hanging out with their parents more than them, just because
Oh,
like I
wow.
was just so much craving that like secure connection. And I mean,
Totally.
children are so fucking resilient. Like I look back on that time and I'm like, that was just so smart. It was just really smart.
So
So
resourceful.
yeah, absolutely. So, really fast forward, I had a very successful life. I really learned, I came from a family of first responders. My dad and most of my uncles are firemen or policemen. So, I really learned how to fucking get things done. I started my own business in high school. I started making a lot of money in high school. I also started drinking a lot in high school. But because
Wow.
I was so successful at school and also so successful at drinking and partying, like it just worked. I mean, I could make straight A's and I could have my life like this. And I was just resilient in that way. So that went on most of my adult life where I was able to kind of just carry both. But what was happening was that every time the alcohol would wear off, or the substances or the behaviors or the new crush or the new love or the awesome sex or whatever little high I was getting in, I would I would wake up not even really hungover, but so emotionally fucking just empty. And it was so, I was always so pissed because I was like, why aren't my friends like this? Like, why do I do cocaine for a weekend and feel like I want to fucking kill myself afterwards? But everyone else can kind of just like get back to it and then wait for it for the next weekend. Well, my emotional trauma was just like screaming to be supported in a real way. So, in college, as soon as I got out of my parents' house, I started going to every single kind of therapist that you can imagine, really looking for the answers. I begged people to diagnose me
Oh,
because
wow.
my mom had a diagnosis of bipolar
She
and
did.
something else. And so I would beg doctors to diagnose me so that it would explain what the fuck was happening
Sure.
to me. But no one would because they didn't see that in me. And so I just kept experimenting. I found MDMA pretty young, around 19, and that was very helpful to my journey. Like I have journals and journals of everything that came out of that. Yeah, and it really supported me. I was
Same.
also using
Same.
psychedelics at that time, and that supported me in big ways. But I still
Absolutely.
couldn't really like figure out the through. In 99, I found yoga in Texas. It was the first yoga studio in Austin, and that was another savior. And right around the same time that I found yoga, I also found someone who's studying somatic experiencing in Austin. And so I really started to get tuned into the fact that like I wasn't going to be able to release the stuff without moving it through my body.
Hmm.
So in 99 is when I started to get turned on to like somatic experiencing and, healing through movement and what trauma really was. But again, nothing worked faster than drinking, partying, and escaping myself in some way. And it was fucking fun and I was really good at it and all the things. So, I had a
Yeah.
beautiful life in San Francisco, like a fucking beautiful life. I did all the things. I made all the money. I I like helped redevelop a neighborhood in San Francisco. I had all these beautiful experiences, but around 36, my spiritual healer, I started working with a spiritual healer. He asked
Okay.
me to go on a journey to figure out if I want children in my lifetime.
Hmm.
And interestingly, like that kind of started this whole thing where through this exploration of do I want children, I was like, I want to heal all my fucking trauma before I turn 40, if I'm even going to have children. And I felt like I just opened up this like huge ass can of worms, and I did. And quite
Hell
indeed I
yeah.
did.
Yes.
Yeah, it was really cool because he's such an anchor in my journey and still is. He started really supporting me to understand spiritual aspects of everything and grounding aspects of where this all came from, and really
Okay.
started teaching me my gifts and what my gifts were from all of this trauma. So, um, around 37, I had a whole list of everything that I needed to do in order to like heal my trauma before I was 40. And I found my birth mom on People Finders. After I found her on People Finders, I happened to be going to teach yoga in Pennsylvania.
Mm.
She lived in DC. And I was like, oh my God, let's just pull the band aid off and go fucking meet. Like, let's do this. So we met up in DC. It went well. Um, and I mean, I don't know, maybe like a month afterwards, I was chemically dependent on alcohol
Oh,
because I
wow.
leaned into alcohol so hard
At
during that
36.
process. I became chemically dependent at 37.
37. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that
So
was the trigger.
I woke up shaking. I couldn't stop. I needed a drink in the morning. I was like, this only happens to people on TV. What the fuck's going on here? I'm highly successful. This is bullshit. I don't understand. And I was really great at hiding it. I just kind of started drinking in the morning and like figuring it out. And then I would be able to detox myself and have like 30 days or so um, where I was okay. But by this time, now there's shame, now there's guilt, now there's confusion, now there's like, I can't let anybody know about this. Now there's like,
Yeah.
I don't believe in all these ways to get sober. Oh my gosh, I'm like trying to heal my trauma at the same time. I don't have enough support
Chaos.
in my life. It was just a mess. And of course, when I finally did have to tell my friends and family, I had to invite my friends down here from Los Angeles actually to come up to San Francisco. And I had researched how to do an at home detox. And I was like, y'all, I need help. And so my dad flew in from Texas. They came up from LA and we did an at home detox.
Oh.
Um, and that was like my very first, like, fuck, like, this is real.
Mm.
Yeah. So it was it was such an interesting thing because like I had the best intentions to like heal all my
Sure.
trauma before I was 40. And I
Oh
giggle
man.
about it now because it really was like I had the best intentions. But what it ended up doing was bringing me even further down into my trauma, really understanding where the shame was, really understanding where this guilt was, and then really learning from a whole new level about what it's like to not only have all of that, but also to be chemically dependent on a substance, in a world where 12 step is really the answer. And it
Mm.
wasn't for me. So
So you tried
that
12
is a
step.
little bit. I did.
Yeah.
Well,
And
I more than tried it. I mean, I did it. I learned it. I learned it. I also did life ring. I also did smart recovery. I learned all of the modalities because I was
sure.
like, this, a combination of all of these might work for me.
Yeah.
But one little thing and one sponsor like yelling at me all the time of what it felt like, and then repeating the same slogans all the time, like that's not going to work for me long term.
Sure. Absolutely.
But there was a lot that did work for me from it, like take what you want, leave what you don't, come back for more
Sure.
later.
So there's a reason why it's kind of the standard, right? In terms of, addiction treatment,
Well, it's been around for
community.
so long, and it's easy. In my opinion, it's the easy thing to to prescribe
Yeah.
because it makes the addict the problem. And y'all, I do not use that word. I'm just using that word for the sake of this conversation and the way that the world
Noted.
looks at it. Yeah, you have to. The addict has to go get help. Everyone else is fucking fine.
Yeah.
Well, no, there's a whole family system that is responsible for all of this, right? And then
Absolutely.
there's a larger cultural system that's responsible for all of this. And then, fucking A. Like, I could go on and on about just the alcohol industry in itself, just in the tobacco industry in itself, right? Like, they fund so much that we do
Absolutely.
in the United States and in the world. And so,
Well,
it's a system. It's a system, and because I'm such a warrior, I was like, I'm gonna fucking get to the systemic change of this bullshit. But it
yes.
took me a while, right? Because I wasn't supported in it. Everyone told me that I was crazy and that with the willpower that I have, I couldn't do it without God. And I'm a big believer in higher power and have been always. So that wasn't a problem for me. But I also didn't believe that God was going to fucking make me better. Like I had to take the consistent aligned action and get to the root cause of what it was for me in order to really live a very beautiful life. And in the 12 step rooms, I would sit next to people that had been in the rooms for 30 years and they were still fucking repeating the same thing. And I was
Totally.
like, no, I don't want that. I want like pleasure and
Absolutely.
joy and fun and purpose.
Absolutely. So, in terms of, I guess being exposed to this root cause, pathway, let's say, that you began to pursue, how'd you get set out on that path? Was there a specific event or person? Was it also working with that gentleman?
Well, I think I was already on the path.
Okay.
A part of my plan was not to become, I did not plan on becoming chemically dependent. I planned on healing my
Sure.
trauma and getting to the root cause of it. And I thought by meeting my birth mom, I would, because I already knew that that was the original incident that everything
Okay.
stemmed from. So I was already very clear on that. I'd already been plugged into that enough. I don't know what year this was, like 2012, 2013. So I was a yoga teacher. I was
You're aware.
had a heart center, real estate. Yeah, I was already
Totally.
coaching people. I was already doing a lot of this work, but becoming chemically dependent on alcohol then deepened my work quickly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in some respects, was that kind of your aha moment that was like, okay, well, there's something deeper here because I'm doing all the work on, already going into my traumas, and yet somehow, some way, I became chemically dependent, as you put it, on alcohol. Was there
Yeah. I mean,
something there?
there was totally something there. Thank you. That's a great question. Um, Nothing works faster than a substance, whether
Sure.
it's a pill, a Xanax, a sugar. Like, it works chemically so quickly, right? So the body responds to that. So again, culturally, it's easier to blame the chemical than it is to look underneath the chemical of like, well, why were they putting that in their body? I mean,
Right.
Gabormante, and there's so many leaders now in the space of trauma work, and that says like, what are we doing? We're treating this whole thing wrong.
Right.
But that hasn't really there's just not enough people yet trained in this to be effective in the treatment industry. So I mean, I went to treatment between 6 and 8 times. I
Mm.
can't remember. It gets a little blurry there. Because when I wasn't able to stay stopped with the alcohol, then I was like, fuck this, I'm dead. So I tried to start trying to kill myself because
Mm.
I couldn't figure it out. And my strong ass independent woman, like super
Sure.
fucking successful at everything I do, I couldn't figure out why I couldn't figure this out.
I hear
And
you.
it was just so annoying because I would go. My relapses were always in the threes, and for the women out there, they were hormonal as well. So I would relapse
Mm.
either at 3 months, 9 months, or 12 months, and I would relapse always between 7 and 10 days before I started to bleed, basically.
Mm.
Um, and so there was just, you could just clock it, and so I just started to like basically be my own test case of like, look, like there's so much
Yeah.
data here
Yeah.
to show that like there's hormones going on, there's trauma, there's all these things. Like, who can help me with all of this and help me stay stopped?
Mm.
And it was really hard to find.
Take us a little bit on that journey that ultimately allowed you to start diving deeper into this root cause work and, you know, getting that support, as you alluded to, that was needed in order to start creating the results that you really wanted.
For sure. And I just want a presence that like I practice what I teach, and so like this is still a part of my life, every moment to moment, every day. um there's not.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just really want to presence that to anyone that's out there struggling with any kind of dependency on a behavior or on a substance. So I the first thing that I teach my clients is something that I already had, and I realized that so many people didn't have it yet. Because I was an entrepreneur, because I was like very filled with purpose and intention, because I was very like naturally optimistic, and because I knew how to advocate for myself and I wasn't afraid to do it. Those are definitely four cornerstones of what supported me to be able to do it differently than everyone else, because I wasn't going to take the shit from I would talk to the owners of the treatment centers to get my way.
Mm.
I mean, I just advocated and advocated, and I was a good client. So I was like, there's no reason you can't give me this. Like, I need this in order to feel safe. Like, make it
Totally.
happen. So everyone isn't as effective as I was. I've been running my own businesses for a really long time. So I was a very effective communicator. So one of the first things that I teach my clients is how to first build those cornerstones and those building blocks in their life, because often there's a big fear from their trauma responses to advocate for themselves, and their nervous system just goes bananas. Unfortunately, I had a lot of practice with that
Yeah,
as an entrepreneur.
absolutely.
So, I just want to really presence that in here, because if I told people the way that I did it, it would not be effective if your nervous system isn't regulated enough to advocate for yourself. And advocating
Yeah.
for yourself is scary, and it takes support, and it takes time to practice how to do it. And I had a lot of practice doing it. So that was a blessing in my journey. Um, and then just to go on with your question, it's like after I
Yeah.
had those cornerstones, then it was very apparent to me that if I didn't continuously ask for the things that I needed, then they were going to keep giving me the same prescriptions. And those prescriptions just like weren't working for me. So, in my very first treatment center in 2014, I started writing a program of kind of
Mm.
everything I felt like they were doing wrong. And that was a great place to start, and how I would do it different. So
Wow.
when I left that treatment center after 35 days or something, I started implementing the things that I would have done differently, which was a nutrition, like high quality, awesome nutrition, high quality movement. I was already a yoga teacher. I'd been teaching yoga at that point for like 6 years or 5 years. I was already teaching nutrition, things like that. So I knew that this was important. I also knew that trauma work was important, and that 12 step wasn't the only answer. And so I started to really learn all of these things. Um,
And how exactly was it? Just kind of random introductions? Since you had to resource a lot of this yourself, you were looking outside the box, so to speak.
Again, like something that's really important to presence is like I was like just going to figure this out. So I knew how to go advocate and find all the resources. How great would it have been for there to be a me out there for me? I would have just like fallen over myself for to have met Amy Guerrero when I was in this place,
Yes.
because it would have shortened my process by like years, and I wouldn't have been in the hospital like over 30 times in a year with
Mm.
alcohol poisoning. I mean, I got raped while I was, I mean, just so much fucking shit I would have not gone through if there was an Amy Guerrero out there that was like, "Oh, girl, I've got you. Come on over. I can teach you all of this in one place. And if you want to do your 12-step program, you can do that too." Right? But I didn't have that. So I was
Absolutely.
out there kind of figuring it all out on my own, buying books,
Yeah.
doing this, going to lots of meetings, using the internet, like finding a person in 12 step that was a little bit more open minded, asking them a bunch of questions, going from one therapist to another, or one psychiatrist to another, asking questions, gathering data. Oh man, it
Really
was
paving the
an
way.
exhausting couple of years,
Absolutely. So, no, I
and
can,
expensive.
I
Like
can
really
imagine.
expensive.
I got started, sounds like maybe a few years later, on this path. And luckily, there were a few key players, out there, mentors, which I would consider, that really helped me, provided me some signposts. And I can only imagine what that would have been like had I not been able to find a couple of them, because I still felt like I did most of the heavy lifting myself. And being in that, in a place where, you know, in some ways you might be feeling helpless. You might be feeling, completely for me, it was at rock bottom, and everything that came with this feeling of, the physical fatigue and, the brain fog, and literally, in some respects, not even having really a will to live, or the energy to pick myself back up. I mean, just really want to commend you, for still getting up, going back out there, and finding those resources, and look at what you've created.
Thank
Look
you.
what you've created.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, when I was living in sober living, after my last unsuccessful event of trying to not be here anymore,
Mm.
I was finally like, get the fuck out of my way. I gotta like figure this shit out. Like, I'm not dying, so I'm gonna live like I've never lived before. And that was in June of 2016. And by September of 2016, I was coaching people and sharing my methodologies.
Wow.
So yeah, once I pulled it together, I was like, I'm teaching this as soon as possible, and I
Absolutely
started
so.
doing it, and Thrive in Recovery was born. And the process that I take people through, I call we're regrooving. We're regrooving your pathways. We're regrooving your mind, body, and spirit to have a different experience and to really live on purpose.
And quite literally, your trauma, your experience in this healing process, of reconciling, the past events that you, so graciously shared with us. It has literally led to your purpose in terms of the expression of what you do day in and day out, helping other individuals in a similar position who are going through the same thing really have, luckily be able to somewhat avoid that learning curve, that very painful learning curve, and being able to, access some valuable resources. So that's truly incredible. And I mean, really, the nature of the show is to ultimately bring our life experiences back to our life purpose, specifically the experiences that involved emotional trauma. Given I've shared with you, and I guess I haven't stated on the show before, given this is the first episode, but my belief is that, in a sense, we're all born into this world whole. We go through trauma, which in effect disconnects us from our authenticity, among other things, including our body. It dysregulates us, and ultimately throws us, some of us, in a complete tailspin, oftentimes beyond even our conscious awareness, that leads to things like addiction, leads to failed relationships, obviously very familiar emotional states, being stuck, for lack of better words. And I I really believe that your experience and what you're now able to do to share that with your clients and share it with the world, through your social media channels and through the content just like this, is truly, I mean, it is a marvelous, a marvelous gift that you're giving to the world. And can you tell us a little bit more about, how this is sort of, you let us know that you started coaching, you got out there and started coaching pretty immediately, but, how is it that you are really working with clients, bring us up to speed, to date, what is it, that maybe you can offer our listeners that has really been a, sort of a core piece of your practice, a core piece of your coaching?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. Yeah. You know, something that was present to me right away. I was teaching in treatment centers, and I was teaching a lot of nutrition at first, and a lot of movement. And something that consistently came to me, and I worked with, humans that were anywhere from 19 years old to like 69 years old, and of all types of different genders and identities and races and colors and all of the things. And so I just got this like beautiful like look at like, okay, what's the number one thing that goes wrong? And first number one thing was that
Mm.
everyone was thinking from their head up. And I've felt my way through my life my whole time. I'm like, that's just how I've done it. And I've very much been in the somatics
Yeah.
and like, ooh, I can feel you. I can feel you. And people are like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm like, I wiggle a lot. I move a lot. I dance with my
Sure.
hips. Like, I've just always felt my way through the world. And so, one of the first things that I would presence is, breath, sound, movement, touch, and just really getting them into their body. And it was so beautiful because I could do it through food and the embodiment practice of dark chocolate and blueberries, and taking them to the grocery store and having them like smell the fruit and touch the food,
Mm.
and just like really watch them turn into different people that dropped in. right? And then through
Yeah.
breathworks and yoga, and I would really encourage them to take all of that seriously, because I was like, oh my gosh, sound bowls! Like, I want to take the fucking rest of the day off and do sound bowls with you, and then let's eat blueberries in the garden later, you know?
Hell
So one
yeah.
of the big things that I presenced was like, get the fuck out of your head and
Right.
welcome to your fucking conscious sober body.
Mm.
Like, the sex is going to get so much better, the your life
Mm.
is going to get so much better, your connection to others is going to get so much better, your intimacy with yourself, with your parents, with your family, with your dog, with your cat, everything's going to get so much better when you can drop into this vessel that you've been, the way that I put it is that you're drowning yourself in. You
Yeah.
were drowning your body out, right? So the purpose of substances is to drown out the noise, the afferent noise that the
Sure.
body's giving you. So you're like, oh, if I take a Xanax, if I drink this, if I snort this, if I smoke this, it'll make that afferent noise
Yeah.
stop. And then 20% is just left in your
That's
head.
right.
So the number one
Mm.
tool that I give is like, let's get you to a place of safety where I can support you to start to embody
Yeah.
your
Makes
body
sense.
and just start to learn that you have one.
Yeah.
And then we can go from there.
And for our listeners, afferent meaning, the emotional data that's flowing from your body up into your brain, up into your mind, that's being recognized, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah.
And thanks so much for sharing that. And before, we obviously hit record here, we were talking about this, well, concept, if you would, granted you have a specific definition, but really of pleasure, the word pleasure. And it sounds like to me what you are starting to get into is the territory of pleasure. And I would be happy to read your definition, unless that's something that you'd like to
Oh my
do.
God, please, by all means, read my definition, please.
Read your
I,
definition.
I would love that. It would be so pleasurable to hear it out of your mouth.
Okay, good. So, after this, I'll be submitting it to each dictionary.
Wikipedia, bitches.
Wikipedia. Yeah, exactly. Dictionaries are kind of, yeah, that really dated me. So back in the day, we used to have those things. They were books. But
I love it.
so your definition of pleasure is moving towards healthy experiences that support you to feel your purpose emotions simultaneous to feeling connected and compassionate. And what a beautiful definition, since, for me personally, pleasure often can go directly to things like, sex. It can go to feeling high, regardless of what substance, or, maybe it was exercise. So really being able to define that in new context, I feel like is so empowering. And as you just shared, the first step of really this, this healing process, involves, getting out of the mind, which it would seem that, some of that pleasure really exists in that domain, and really into the body, which is this much more, somatic, felt experience, that it does not involve, the mind manipulating, what it is, or what it is that we do not feel, but rather really being in tune with, let's just say, that 4/5, for some of us, part of our selves that exists below the neck. And so let's talk a little bit more about pleasure.
Yeah.
How's that burning for you?
Yeah, this conversation is just so good. I'm like, yes, yes. Because,
Good.
oh gosh, like something that one of the most common things that I hear from especially newly sober people, whatever they're sober from, whether it's a sex addiction, I don't like the word addict and addiction, y'all. So when I use it, it's mainly just because that's what the world says.
Sure.
But
So
they've
we'll
coped.
call this episode Addicts and Addiction.
Yeah, let's not call it that.
Just kidding, of course. We'll refrain
Yeah.
away from those labels. Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah, I really don't like to pathologize in my life and the labels and everything. So, Something that I hear so often is like, oh my God, Amy, I'm so bored. I'm so bored. I'm so bored. And I'm like, what? You're not
Yeah.
bored, right? You're not bored. It's like impossible in 2021 to be fucking bored. There is so much stimulus out there. Like, I mean, whatever you fucking want to do
Amen.
other than like not be able to be closer than 6 feet away from someone without a mask on, you
Right.
can do it, right? But you can still
Exactly.
do whatever the fuck you want to do. Like,
Yeah.
there's just nothing, and of course, I well want to presence that I have a lot of privilege, that even though I'm a Mexican woman, I have presented the way I present in the world, and I have a lot of fucking privilege. So I do
Absolutely.
highly recognize that and want to presence that in this conversation when I say this thing, because I am I totally honor that, and I also meet people where they're at, and I speak from a place of my own filters and the privilege that I have.
Thank you for that
When I
disclaimer.
hear the Absolutely. When I hear the word bored, it just makes me like really like want to feel for them, that they're not bored, and that by bringing simple pleasurable acts into your daily life, it supports so much to presence the feelings in your body of the simple things. I live in a canyon and the hummingbirds come by, and that is so pleasurable to me.
Mm,
The way that the sand feels underneath my feet,
I love
right?
that.
My choice to drink bubbly water with essential oil wild orange in it.
Mm.
You
The
know,
simple
the
pleasures,
mm,
the
yes,
subtle,
yes,
nuanced pleasures.
yeah, like this conversation. It's
Mm.
just like, oh my God, I'm so, my body feels just so everything everywhere. My toes are tingling, my legs are hot, my chest is open. Like I'm just like, oh yes, like I just want to
Mm.
just be in this delicious moment. I want to be in this my body and really experience Luke in this conversation and our listeners when they listen to this. And oh, how can I just
Right.
like really like appreciate it at this deep
Yes.
level? And I knew that if I was repeating the same stories over and over again, and I believe in rituals, y'all. Like my life is very, very fucking structured, very structured. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a conscious
Right.
sober woman. Like I've got a lot of masculine structure in my fucking life, so that I can have this
Mm.
beautiful pleasure, so that I can feel in my body while I'm having this conversation with you, so that I can be present to only this
Yeah.
and feel my purpose emotions
Totally.
inside of me while I'm doing it, right? And so my real thing is like, without feeling the pleasures of the body, of the mind, of the connection of life, it's really difficult to tune into purpose
Yeah.
without that.
I hear you.
Because if not, we're like pounding away at something. And believe me, I've fucking taken that approach and can still fall
Sure.
into that approach at times. But I'm like,
Very
woo,
much. Same.
where's the pleasure, Amy? Where's the pleasure? Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So many ways that we can go on this. You know, from contrasting pain to pleasure, right? Depending on where, let's just say one listener versus another is at in their journey, this idea of pleasure could be infuriating, because there's just so much consumption by pain at this point. And yet, what you said, really struck a chord with me in terms of being able to find pleasures in the most subtle, nuanced, little crevices of life, whether it be, um, you know, let's just say, to give this some context, we live in a world of overstimulation, from the most complexities, always, reaching and, begging for our attention with our smartphones or our computers, and this notification and that badge, and, basically being reachable, at the drop of a pin. And it's no secret that this is being discussed amongst the collective, that it's really taken us out of this idea of presence, this idea of having this more mindful experience with one's environment, right? With the seemingly smallest aspects of life that is so easy to take for granted because it doesn't involve it doesn't feel like a dopamine hit that may come from, a comment on Instagram. And yet there's this process of, really being that I went through, and it sounds like you went through, and I'm sure we're not alone in being able to shift, our sources of pleasure. The way that we're able to register pleasure, and, I'm not a neuroscientist, so, won't get into the pathways, here associated with pleasure in the brain, but it seems like, there's so much that we can access literally at the tip of our fingers. And there's this process, though, of reconditioning. There's this process of reframing, essentially what is happening to us or what we are taking for granted into, this moment is a gift, into walking on the sand. Maybe it's a little bit warm, or maybe things didn't go my way today, but I'm able to really find pleasure in this moment based on this subtle experience. That's a little bit of a reflection from me, but does that land?
Well, yeah, I mean, I just couldn't take it anymore. I had to say, yeah. Like, I mean, I just agree so deeply. I was just like, because in order to feel a deep level of pleasure, my choice is to find the pleasure in everything.
Yeah.
So to find the pleasure in, when I burn my tongue on the hot coffee or hot mud drink that I drink in the morning per you, right?
Oh, yeah.
To find the pleasure in the, fucking Zoom went down again. To find the pleasure in my internet went down last night right while I was posting to Instagram. To find the pleasure in hanging in the tension with someone I love very much and letting them go through their own process. To find the pleasure in like one of my clients is not having a great time right now. How can I find the pleasure in this with them? I mean, it's like, how do I meet everything with that curiosity and that pleasure? Because that keeps me in my purpose emotions more. Because it supports me to get into the observation of what's happening instead of the judgment of what's happening. And again, this is the work that I do with people. It does happen way more quickly than you think, y'all. This doesn't have to be a long process, and you can have one or two moments of it and then start confirming those experiences over and over and over again. Like, I want more of that. I want more of that. And there's this thing in the recovery spaces of like, you don't want to get into this habit of me of teaching them that more is better. And I'm like, that's not fucking true. It's just not. Like, if I can show someone how to regulate their nervous system through the polyvagal lens and really teach them to use their vagal brake and do all these things, they'll fucking know when enough is enough. And if they don't, there's still some, something to learn there.
Absolutely.
And, obviously this is newer, and there is a lot of neuroscience to it. And I love what you were saying about the neuroscience, because just the simple act of celebration and of clapping and of like, oh yes, Luke, that's so true. Like, ding, 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 ding. You get dopamine hits
reward
from
pathways,
all of this stuff. And we move towards things that make us feel good.
Absolutely.
And dopamine hits make us feel good.
Right.
So where are we getting those dopamine hits from? Like, porn is super easy to get dopamine hits from. Sure. Like, I mean, it's all there. There's nothing for you to wonder about. You just get it all.
Absolutely.
But
pure
there's
fantasy.
the more subtle things that can, with time, with support, in safe environments, all these things very important, that you can really start to tune into in your body and start to play with and start to create practices with them. And I have hundreds and hundreds of pleasure practices. Something as simple as one that I would teach way back in the day is when you had a craving for sugar, to start scratching your arm and just a light, delicate touch. Or if you like it harder, then do it harder. But there's so many nerve endings on the tips of your fingers, and it feels so good. and the sugar craving will pass in like 90 seconds.
Wow.
And you can experience some pleasure because the sugar is going to bring you
Absolutely.
pleasure too. It's just going to be hard and fast.
Absolutely. So in a sense, what you're doing is giving your brain essentially a different, you know, out, I guess, path, right? Like there's this concept of your brain's always seeking duration, path, outcome. And ultimately, you're helping yourself create that outcome of pleasure through a different, more, let's just say, a healthier um, mechanism, through a healthier practice than, say, consuming sugar, which, you know, I hate to break it to anyone, but it's not that great for you. Um, you know, and finding maybe a different pleasurable practice to take its place. Is that kind of what I'm gathering from this?
Yeah. And to be, wherever you're at, it's okay. There's definitely times where I can be more in that immobilized place and just collapsed and just be like, fuck pleasure. Like, I can't find it. No, 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 no. Like
Totally.
meeting ourselves where we're at, you know, when the pathway doesn't include some pleasure, you're much less likely to go on the pathway.
Absolutely. That's right. You got to cue up your brain to say, hey, over here, buddy, this is what we've been looking for. Let's go this way.
Yeah.
And I
And I trick my
totally,
brain all kinds of ways. Go ahead. Yeah, you totally what?
which I do want to get into. And I was going to say, you know, perhaps how relevant during this time. I mean, you know, you're not the first person who people have said, I'm so bored. You know, like life feels so mundane. For many of us, you know, being trapped in a number of different experiences and environments, both internally and externally, which could take us on an entirely different tangent here. But, you know, nonetheless, leading to pain. And so a practice like this, granted, let's just say it's not going to help one escape from, you know, a situation like domestic violence, of course, but you know, in subtle ways, can help us redirect perhaps a craving for um, sugar or another substance that isn't serving uh, a person in this given moment. So let's get into a little bit about how you were just alluding to are working with pleasure in terms of cultivating it.
Absolutely. Great question. And I really again, I always want a presence that, if you're feeling dysregulation in your nervous system and this is making you angry or feel like fuck that, I can't have pleasure, I need to suffer right now, like it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. Like wherever you are, we'll
Yeah.
meet you there. And something very simple that I do with my clients and in my group coaching programs is presence in some music. And I
Mm,
ask everyone to create a basically like a pleasure playlist
love
that
it.
yeah, and that can take them through their different nervous system responses as well. So like
Oh
what makes
wow.
them feel very ventral and very in flow, and then what makes them feel sympathetic and like out of control and chaos and mobilized,
Wow.
and then songs that that make them feel in that dorsal immobilized place, and
God.
and well they'll put their songs um in the group community cohort, and we'll all
Totally.
listen to them.
Can
And
you
so
tell just real
cool to
quick
like
what exactly, you know, ventral and sympathetic and dorsal, what are those exactly? Or
Absolutely. So just
summed up
a
version.
really, yeah, a really
Top
quick
level.
version is that the nervous system has three different states, the oldest being dorsal, which is was discovered, 500 million years ago with the cavemen of just like just totally immobilized, like they hide from the
Right.
tiger when the tiger comes. And then
Yeah.
400 million years ago we evolved into a more mobilized place, which we call the dorsal response. Then we call the sympathetic
Sympathetic.
response, right? Yeah, that sympathetic response is like, oh my gosh, I can fight, I can flight, I can move, I can do things, I can kill the tiger. And then we have meat.
Yeah.
And then through that meat, we evolutionized more, and we actually found a third part of our nervous system that is the flow state. And just a real short definition of that, it basically, the vagus nerve has an ability to either speed up the heart or slow down the heart. And in this ability to do that, then we find the state of flow where everything is mobilized enough, but not over mobilized and not immobilized. And no one lives in this state all the time. Absolutely zero people do that. No human does that. No animal
Yeah.
does that. And we have the ability to actually control the ventral system if we can put a break in place. And that's often something that I'm teaching through pleasure,
Yeah.
right? Through visualization, through song, through movement, through breath, through
Beautiful.
sound. All of these things is like, how can we create more pleasure by using your break system and slowing your body down? Because when you're in that ventral place, then you have more access to
That's right.
pleasure.
That's right. And ventral is essentially the state of connection, right?
Yes.
And trauma is inherently disconnecting us from not only that state, but our bodies from each other, and the list goes on. But yes, I love those practices to get us into those ventral states, which ultimately, would you say that's what we're seeking in some capacity through the coping mechanisms, which may be classified as addictive behaviors, whether it be drinking or
Absolutely.
pornography or
Yeah. Absolutely. It's like my nervous system is out of control. Fuck, 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 fuck. A drink, 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 a Xanax, a Xanax, a Xanax. Oh my God, I'm so fucking, I've had too much to drink, or I can't do it. Like, let me do some cocaine. Let me do this. Let me get an upper. Let me do some Adderall. Like, what do you got? What do you got? Can I pick me up? Can you take me down? Like, and then, I mean, there's like that perfect 5 minutes of cocaine and alcohol and all the
That's
things
right.
in your body where you're just
Yep.
like, oh God, this feels so good. We're all seeking that
Yep.
over and over and over again. And that's
Yep.
not a true ventral place because it's all contaminated with substances. However,
right.
it is possible to find it in consciousness.
And how fascinating that we can actually access that without, let's just say, the side effects. I mean, hey, I've been there with you. How I've had some great times, using substances. However, it's also led to a number of painful experiences subsequently. So, just to give some context there, but how wonderful that we can resource exactly what we're seeking through those substances in a practice like this, which is bringing us back into this ventral state, which is what we're really, really, really seeking. And is there something that maybe we can walk through that feels good in this moment, that you could walk me through as far as an exercise or...
Yeah. I mean, I've given a few different things that really support us to just come back, but um, I think one of the easiest tools to come back into just your body first, because again, we'll often try to force pleasure, right? Like you'll eat a whole bar of chocolate unconsciously.
So when you say come back to your body, what exactly, help me understand that a little bit more.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, just I started to slow down. You're like, okay, let's have an experience together. So I'm lowering the tone of my voice.
Amen.
I'm slowing down my breathing. And I just invite you to just feel the difference in the energy that we're creating right now.
Yeah.
And as we do that, just start to find your breath, and something as simple as breathing in for 4 counts and breathing out for 6 counts.
Through the nose, through the mouth, doesn't matter.
whatever, it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, that long exhale, I felt like a drop. I felt like I moved more into my body there.
Totally. And the sound of your voice changed a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can see a difference in the color of your skin. Yeah. And it's so simple. We can do this at any time, you know?
So simple yet
Just
so effective. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's so many different ones that I just, I think like let's leave everyone with this. Let's leave your body with this because it's so beautiful and so easy and you can do it anywhere.
Yeah, I'm just feeling really energy shifting from where I tend to prominently be in my head into my body and out through my extremities. Would you call this emotional regulation?
Yeah. Dropping in, emotional regulation, moving towards what feels good. Flow, ventral, pleasurable.
So one thing that you mentioned, and we'll talk in this regulated state here, is the purpose emotions, and definitely something that I'm familiar with. But I'm wondering, is there let's call it the Reader's Digest version that you can share with our listeners about purpose emotions, which for me personally is something that I use a technique like this breath work, the long exhales, to regulate out of what I would consider the sympathetic state that you referred to earlier, and more into my ventral, which is where I access those purpose emotions. So
yeah, for sure.
Is there sort of, in your words, an easy way to help our listeners understand what purpose emotions are?
Well, they gotta come like
mine.
ask us more questions to do that. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, there. I mean, the
Yes.
Reader's Digest simple thing is move towards what feels good and define it.
Okay. Amen.
Right?
And
like, how are you feeling? Somebody will tell me like, Amy, I feel the best when I come out of a yoga class. I'm like, awesome. Tell me exactly what you're feeling when you come out of a yoga class. Oh, I feel so light. I feel so easy. I feel so happy. I'm so connected. I'm like, awesome. So which of those words do you connect with most right now? Oh, I want to feel connected and I want to feel at ease. Like all the time. I'm like, fuck yeah, awesome. There you go. Let's move towards those emotions. Right? Amen. It can be that easy. It can be that easy. And I call it Mastin, one of my mentors, did teach me a different way to get about going to finding these purpose emotions. But way before Mastin was even doing his own work, I had this practice of being on purpose. And it was the difference between the work I do and how I feel. And I was like, oh, well, that's a purpose. Like, my job is my job. I feel on purpose when I'm teaching yoga. Right. And I was able to differentiate, like, yeah, I have this real estate thing that I'm really fucking good at. But, when I'm in the yoga room and I'm teaching students, I'm on purpose.
Absolutely.
And see, I was connecting to my body and how I felt while I was doing it, not the work that I was doing. You feel me?
Amen. So back to the concept of, it's a purpose emotion, not a purpose behavior. Mm-hmm. It's a felt sense. And, our listeners might be familiar with, this idea that everything that we do is, in a sense, to feel a certain way. So every goal that we go after, or every behavior that we engage in is to help ourselves feel a specific emotion or feeling. And as you alluded to, coming back to really understanding and starting by just identifying what makes you feel good. And perhaps when speaking of pleasure, those two couldn't be more appropriate to put into a package deal here, because, like Joseph Campbell said, along the lines of following your bliss. And, with that also this concept of, emotional intelligence, starting to really tune in to what it is that makes you feel that ventral state, that makes you feel connected, that makes you feel alive, that makes you, obviously practice caution there, but what makes you feel good. And no wonder so many of us have found our ways to perhaps more destructive behaviors in order to meet those needs. But from what I heard from you and what I wholeheartedly believe and incorporate in my practice, coaching practice, that is that we can resource those, that we can create those emotions, both within ourselves and in everything that we do, in every relationship that we have. And that's a real game changer. That's a real game changer. So
Yeah, it's the
beautiful
whole
word.
thing. Yeah, it's the whole thing. It's just like, how can we do that more often and do it fucking imperfectly
That's right.
and move towards what feels good? Yeah, we get so caught up in this bullshit up here and all these ideas and lived experiences that we've had that our brain, I call it the slideshow. It'll give you the slideshow. If you ask for your brain to give you all the confirming experiences that you're a piece of shit, it will give you every single thing.
Amen.
So it
You're
does
right.
it does take a little regrooving to create new pathways
I
to
love
come
it.
into the slideshow of I'm a badass. Oh yeah, there's
Amen.
evidence. Oh God, yes, that feels so good. Oh, I want more of that. Oh
There
yes,
you
yes,
go.
yes. Yeah.
Rewards. I love what you said about just how simple it can be. That it doesn't require perfection. It doesn't require, you know, skydiving or going on an exotic vacation or um, whatever it might be, seeking out, the perfect partner to have a one night stand with or whatever it might be. It really can come from the sand, under your feet or between your toes. It can come from, gently massaging, your forearm with the tips of your fingers. In such a beautiful and simple and oftentimes maybe too simple for our complex human brains, yet so effective. And I think this is a reminder that we have so much literally at our fingertips to be able to utilize to bring us back to a state of pleasure, which, to bring it full circle, sounds like maybe an underlying desire of, specifically for me, of my experiences with any sort of chemical dependence.
For
Am I
sure.
am I am
Yeah.
I am I off there?
No, you're just
Okay,
100% on, I mean,
cool.
um, anyone that I work with, whether they have, whether they're still coping with substances or they have 30 years of substance free living, if we don't get to that root of what was actually happening, you continue to seek outside of yourself to create that ventral feeling or to create that purposeful feeling or to make that pain go away. And when we can get to it, unravel it, do the things, discover it, stay curious about it, bring some pleasure to it, bring some purpose
Mm,
to it, bring consistent aligned action to it, keep doing the damn thing. The natural evolution of my clients is that, they come to me, we do some trauma work, we get really on fire and on purpose on their purpose emotions, what they want, how they want to live in the world. And then we start how they relate to one thing is how they relate to everything. So then we start really either building a business together, or
Hmm.
in parting ways in a relationship, or going closer to a relationship, um, creating new relationships with their children or their family. It's just so beautiful because there's this natural evolution, just like the nervous system that we go through.
Yes.
And as we get more regulated, we're ready for more. And,
Oh,
something that I really want to presence as well is that it's natural for humans to want more. That's how we evolve. I mean, we wouldn't have a vaccine right now if we didn't want more, because everyone wants to figure shit out. And we wouldn't have a saturated spaces of just everyone being online and doing these things if they didn't want more. So it's very natural to want more, and it's okay. We don't have
absolutely.
to make everything so fucking wrong and takes everything so fucking seriously. Like, ugh, it's just exhausting.
I couldn't agree more. There's an inevitable duality to all things, but especially desire for more. And so the light side of that is, like you alluded to, can lead to so much more fullness, can lead to such elevated experience of life, can lead to innovation and new technology, and so many let's just say problem solving, or rather solutions to problems. So it doesn't all have to be looked at in a dim light. And I think
Yeah.
that's what I love about your work, and specifically your message, in really being able to bring that possibility into not only the lives of your clients, but anyone who really is able to access your work, to live life more pleasurably, and it not be associated, especially doing that. I can only imagine in the space of, sobriety, in the space of working with quote unquote addiction, um, can maybe feel like it's a little contradictory to status quo, to what else, what's being indoctrinated, and in the other areas of this treatment and of these programs. So I
Yeah.
love that you're
You can
bringing.
invite me to another conversation about that, and you can just let me rip it.
Hell
Because
yeah, let's do it.
that's a whole another 2 hour conversation. And I love being the feminine energy in the space that makes so much fucking sense and has so much fucking data to prove that my
Hell
systems
yeah.
work. And also to just be so fucking against what has been taught for so long. So I am
Oh,
that
rebel.
warrior in this space.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Yes, you are. Yes, you
Yes.
are. I love it. And why don't you tell us on that note a little bit about Sober Relationship School, and your program, where our listeners and can learn a little bit more about your offerings and what you're cooking up.
Oh, well, what I'm cooking up is so fucking spectacular. But I'll tell
Oh,
you a little bit
smells
about Sober
delicious.
Relationship School. Yeah. Sober Relationship School is something that came out of a real desire from my clients to have more connection and community. They felt like they learned so much and they became so trauma trained in the experiences with me, and they felt lonely, that they didn't really have a place to practice this outside of their with me. And they're like, oh my gosh, I want to like connect more deeply with other people who know this stuff. And so I created school for several reasons: to first of all be able to hold space and connect more people to polyvagal and attachment work, and through the really, I teach a lot in the masculine and feminine communication, and really support people to drop into their bodies. We do a lot of connection, and we have a lot of fun
Mmm.
together. And
Ventral.
we also learn a shitload of science. So you get like it's built for every single um, personality. It's built for every single person. It's built for every single human to just like really get into the deliciousness of having healthy conscious relationships,
Grooving.
and healthy conscious relationships to their lovers, to their partners, to their pets, to their money, to their food, to how they relate in the world, all of the things. So we bring it all in. It's so cool because like I just can't even tell you the things that have happened in sober relationship school over the last 6 months. Like, people have found their partners, people have decided to part
Wow.
ways. There's been people that have divorced after 24 years under the umbrella and container of our group. There's people that have started businesses. There's people that have ended businesses to start other businesses. There's people that have found their voice for the first time. There's people that have learned how to breathe and respond
Mm,
differently. Like, it just, the gamut of just possibility that happens in that space is amazing. So, yes, sober relationship
yes.
school. And I'm just so
So
excited.
if you guys haven't caught on to yet, this is a group coaching program that Amy runs, and it sounds like, beautiful people from all walks of life and different stages of the journey are really able to come into community and support. Obviously, Amy supporting them, but them also supporting one another. And as we like to call it, in the men's work that I do, it's like, you just did my work for me. And that creates such a rich experience, since, we are all inevitably connected deeply. And we tend to be able to find a piece of ourselves in every single person that we meet. And, that's just such a beautiful experience, and a beautiful community to cultivate, to bring, everyone who has these each individual who has these desires to elevate their lives, to step into their purpose, to heal, just as you have the trauma that has, in some ways had some, unfortunate impacts on their lives up until this point. And to be able to steer them in that direction, I think is such a important, to say the least, thing that's happening at this moment in time. So I really want to, anyone who this program sounds like it would perhaps be appropriate for it, I would love for them to check it out. Where exactly can they find out more about it?
At Thrive in Recovery with Amy. That's my Instagram, that's my Facebook, and that is my website. And you can look under Relationship School, and just as I am planning something even more special that's
Ooh,
going to be launching very soon. And I'll just tell you that, like, it's for everyone, and that wants to go deeper and learn how to communicate, and really be in their power while they communicate. So it's very exciting. And
beautiful.
come check me out on Instagram, because you will find out more very soon.
Amen. So at Thrive in Recovery with Amy, that's on Instagram. Also, facebook.com/Thrive in Recovery with Amy, and thriveinrecoverywithamy.com. Sounds like those are the three touch points for the most part.
Yep. Yep.
Beautiful. Well, I definitely recommend everybody connect on Instagram. Amy puts out some awesome content. I mean, graciously, to really help meet people where they're at. And her group coaching programs and her one-on-ones, I can really testify for this, are absolutely, I mean, a cut above. So thank you for all that you do, Amy. Just such a blessing to have you in my life, and for the work that you're doing. And thank God you have gone through what you've gone through, and that you're here today with us to share your beautiful gift. Um, if there's anything else that you'd like to say, otherwise we'll check on out, girl, until the next one. All right, then. We'll see you soon. And those links will be in the show notes. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Take care for now. Be well. Much love. Bye.